All right, we've started, so people should be coming in. And then Susan, do you see it full screen for
I
me?
do. Yeah, that
Okay.
looks perfect.
Dr. Pizzula, it is currently recording if you want to click the stop or the pause button to end that until Ms. Harrow speaks.
Perfect. All right, and we are recording.
Great. And then Kenna, if you could make me the featured speaker, that would be great too. And while you're doing that, I just want to say I would not be here if it weren't for the extraordinary skills of Dr. Jenna Pizzula. She wrote me the most beautiful email that gave me a sincere compliment and talked about your group and why I should come speak here for free. And I couldn't wait to do it. And that is very unusual for me to even respond to these kind of requests. And so it's to her, she's already on her way to the great ways to connect to the media and to people in general. So author Victoria and I were sitting together reviewing her latest TV interview, and she was poised, she was professional, she was getting all of her points, but something was off. And I said, what do you think is off? And she said, I'm trying to be bigger than myself. I'm trying to reach millions of people, and I think that I have to just like expand my presence. And I said, what if you just were yourself? And over the next hour, we worked on her facial language, her body language, and her verbal language, so she could relax and connect deeply with her audience and also with the host and the guests. And after that, she called me up really excitedly the next time she had a national interview, and she said, "You won't believe what happened." What? After I spoke, after my appearance, the camera and crew stood up and applauded and gave me a standing ovation. And I said, "Well, why do you think that is? What did you do?" And she said, "I was myself, nothing more, nothing less, and that was enough." And my wish for you as you embark on this publicity journey is that you go forward exactly as you are, nothing more, nothing less, and work with the knowledge, the skills, and the personality that you already have to reach the results that you want. And if I could tap you on the head right now and grant you a wish for today, the biggest takeaway would be, in the words of Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. So I'm going to cover the foundation that you need to prepare psychologically and physically to be yourself and develop your presence and your gravitas, which includes both mindset and muscle memory. And I'm going to cover both the 5 do's and the 5 don'ts before, during, and after a media interview. So am I the feature? I still see on the screen, Jenna, just my big introduction instead of me?
Let's see. Oh, I see. Let me stop sharing and see if that helps. Does that help now as the panel speaker?
There we
Okay,
go.
perfect.
I think that'll be more interesting for people, I hope. Not that your slide was very interesting. I just mean for continuation. So I also invite you, as you hear something that resonates with you, to pop it into the Q&A, even if it's not a question. Just if you hear something that you think, I would really like to remember that. We all learn so much from each other, and then at the end, Jenna will read those comments so we can reinforce our learning from each other, because we all hear different things and we pick up on different things, and then putting them in a perspective helps us help each other, which is something I think that you all want, as the only 15, since you're the 15% of all cardiologists as women, to be able to bring together your skills and knowledge and help each other. So there are 4 questions I ask all of my clients when we first begin, and this sets the foundation for your whole publicity campaign and for your messaging strategy. And what I'm calling your messaging strategy is, what are you going to say when you have this huge publicity platform to your audience and to the world, and getting your message out there? So what is it most important that you are going to convey to them? So we move through these quickly, and also, we move through these quickly, and it really sets the total foundation. So the first one is, what is your deepest intention? How do you want to serve? What's your big vision in the world? And that can also be the vision for your community. It doesn't have to be worldwide. It's whatever that is for you. Number 2 is, what do you want for yourself? What do you want to receive back? And we're looking at professionally, personally, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually, because PR can open up all of that entire world to you. So do you want more media presentations? Do you want speaking engagements? Do you want a book deal? Do you want funding for research? Whatever that is, that's going to be incorporated into the pattern naturally, without being salesy, into a conversation, so you have a return on your investment, so to speak. I'm always looking at ROI and results and how you're setting up your brand. Number 3 is, what do you want your audience to do? What do you want them to take away? This is your call to action. Do you want them to become a patient? Do you want to get research funding? Do you want to sit on a board? Do you want to change a perspective? It doesn't always have to be something like directly for you. Sometimes it's about changing someone's perspective or mindset, or to be more kind and compassionate. Number 4 is, what is your big dream if anything were possible? This is where we really expand our mind out, poof, like as big as possible. Someone you'd like to partner with, something you imagine that might even be too big to achieve. We look at what's the big, and we incorporate that into your pattern as well. So one client of mine who was a board certified physician, she was a telehealth innovator and actually accredited in 50 states, and also had an MBA. And she had several PR agencies booking her. So she was out there talking wildly about, well, she wasn't sure exactly what. And she said, she came to me, she said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not being really intentional. And what I found working with quite a lot of women is that they're so busy giving, they're not thinking about the intentionality of it and what they want to receive for themselves, and also keeping in mind that bigger vision. And I even spoke to a woman who had spoken to Davos, and she's like, I'm not really focused on my intention. And I think that's a really huge missing piece to doing any kind of media and any kind of social media. I'm including social media too. We always want to keep this in mind. So when that physician client and I worked on getting clear on all of those 4 areas, she grew her brand and her company and her practice. And once she was really aligned, she actually got new business advising companies on how to set up telehealth practices. She was invited to a charity event that was really close to her heart, that was concerning children, where she met celebrities so she could further her cause. And she was consistently booked in magazines, on podcasts, and TV. So that's what can happen when everything really is congruent and aligned. Now to the 5 do's and don'ts. Number 1, do set your deepest intention and revisit it before every media appearance. And I also recommend that you revisit it at every patient visit as well, so it starts to become ingrained and it starts to become natural. Steve Jobs said, I want to make a dent in the universe. And I want to ask you, how do you want to make your dent? That's one of the overarching thoughts of actually being a public figure. I love your dog, by the way, Dr. Galati. I love having animals in the picture where they show us how that unconditional love, which is such a beautiful thing, I think, which we all could use some lessons on. Number 2 is don't leave it up to the media to create your questions. You write the questions that you want to be asked. This is for a podcast as well. And how do you do that? You reverse engineer it. What do you want to say? You work that out first, and then you write the questions that will elicit your answers. And then number 3 is research the person who will be interviewing you so you can create a rapport, know their style and the kind of information that they're going to ask you. So whether it's a TV show, whether it's a radio show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a print interview, whether it's a social live, you want to know the style and the pacing and the personality of that person. And this is especially important in a pre-interview because you can identify their bias and where they're heading to create a story. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes when a journalist comes to you, they have an idea of a perspective of a story that they want. And you may not agree with that perspective. And you have every right and ability to change their perspective and give them a whole new view on it. And they may change the entire direction of the story. It's also important because any big interview opportunity, any big podcast or TV show or radio show is going to do a pre-interview with you. So that's actually an audition, and you need to pass that audition in order to get to the actual show. So it's very, very important to be prepared for that and to understand what it is that you want to say so people will be inspired to book you. Number 4 is don't answer a host or a journalist questions literally. So this is part of your mindset is answer what you want your audience to know. And you're always in service to your audience and your big vision. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we've all heard politicians and people who are very agile do this. And this is a great skill to begin to learn. Number 5 is do create a soundbite strategy that incorporates your values, your mission, and your message so you can tailor that to any audience. So depending on who you're speaking to, you want to shape that. You have your core of that, and then you shape that for each audience. I remember talking to a woman, she was a virtual reality specialist, a young woman speaking all over the world, and she had clients like, like Google, and who was I thinking of? She had major like fashion designers, and she gave the same speech to each audience. And when I media trained her, I'm like, well, when you're speaking to architects, you're not going to say the same thing as who might hire her, by the way, for her visionary view. You're not saying the same thing as if you're speaking to an audience who might like visit that site that you create. And that was like a light bulb moment for her because she just kept giving the same talk to every single audience. No, they have completely different perspective of what they want to hear from her, right? So words are the ambassadors of your spirit. And the first question to ask yourself is, what does my audience need to know now and how can I help? So if you answer that question, then you'll always be in service to your audience. Then when you plan, prepare, and practice, you can be free to be spontaneous. And this is really the key and I'm sure because as cardiologists that you got good at what you did by practice, iteration, right? And then so it's the practice, the repetition, and the iteration of constantly refining things. So when you plan, prepare, and practice, you're free to be spontaneous. This gets into your mental and muscle memory, and it also frees you up to be present in the moment. So you can relax and create that kind of rapport with someone. And then when some spontaneous thought comes in that's relevant in the moment, you can insert it and keep all of your interviews fresh. The number one thing the media wants is new. So you all have an advantage of that because they want new research. And what's the advantage, I think, in your field is that there hasn't been a lot, as far as I know, and Dr. Jenna Pizzula and I talked about a lot about women's health in cardiology. And that's, I don't know if all of you specialize in women, even though you're women, but the whole idea of cardiology and women's health and health in general, I think could use a lot of perspective and shaping and positioning and packaging in your industry, so that research and packaging it, either it's original research or you take other people's research it and package it and position it in a new way. So you don't have to do your own research, but you can compile research together. And then when you add in your opinions and your insights, you start the movement from expert to authority to thought leader. So that's the pathway to becoming a leading thinker in your field. There's always this hunger for new scientific breakthroughs, and this is what Dr. Sarah Gottfried did. She's Harvard trained, and she was one of my clients. She wrote The Hormone Cure, and we worked together to make that first book a New York Times bestseller. And one of the things that we worked on is developing, she wanted to move out of practice somewhat, so we were moving into developing programs and licensing products. And I prepped her for national TV interviews to be featured in O Magazine. And now she's regularly tapped on top podcast media conferences. She did a TEDx talk. And she was, this is one of her key areas of being on the cutting edge of all research. She's not doing it herself. She's just always on the lookout for what's new and what can help her patients. And she's always evolving and creating. I think now she's written 4 books, 2 New York Times bestsellers. So she's constantly getting that new information, synthesizing it, and putting it out there to help women. What else can you include in your soundbite messaging strategy? This is your message to millions. This is, what are you going to say when you have the opportunity to have this platform of publicity? So it's what I call the 5 S's: stories, suggestions, which is also advice, successes, statistics, and startling news. So first, tell stories. Everyone wants to hear stories first. And Muriel Rukeyser, who's a poet, said, "The world is not made of atoms, but of stories." And I think that if women told their stories more often, we need to hear them, the whole world would crack open for us. So journalists want to hear those stories. If you start to notice in both print and broadcast media, it's usually the whole program or the whole article is centered around stories. So personal stories about you and professional stories about what you do and how you do it. We want to hear your personal experiences that show who you are and what you stand for. And when you talk about those, when you talk about the success of your patients, it's a really nice way. I know women don't like to brag, but when you talk about how you've helped people, it's the person that's the center stage and not you. And you're speaking about your results through them. So that's a really elegant way to toot your own horn. The second S is spout statistics. So we've talked about that. Share research or data and then interpret it with those insights and opinions of yours. Third S is share advice or how to. This is where you get really granular. That's where you see a lot on TV, you know, the 5 ways to prevent COVID, for example. So it would be 5 ways to prevent a heart attack or to prevent any kind of heart, I don't know what you call it, another situation or a heart issue. So the fourth, so the other thing is that I want to say about sharing your advice or how to is, I don't know if you remember a long time ago, there was a radio show called Dr. Science, and he would always say, he knows more than you do. So you as cardiologists, as experts, you know more than we do. So keep that in mind, that you know more than we do, and to look for, where is the gap? What's not being talked about? The fourth S is, I talked about that. Tell about patient successes and outcomes working for you. Okay, so we talked about that. And then the fifth S is startle us with news. What's happening in your field that matters to us? What do we need to know? And then role play the actual interviews in every medium. So that's podcast, TV, print, social lives. It's only in the actual interaction and speaking things out loud that you can see where you stumble, fumble, or freeze. And that's where we start to refine that. And also to work on worst case scenarios, like what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? What's the worst thing that you don't want to be asked? And to be able to go through that so you can understand and know where your triggers are, so you can get over that freeze and that fumble and stumble. With one client who was an expert in DEI and cybersecurity, she came to me because she said, I'm suffering from imposter syndrome. And by the way, it's most women who are like highly skilled, who claim that they have imposter syndrome. I would like to totally shift that and not give it so much energy, and really talk about normalizing the fact that when we are reaching for the next level, we automatically, it's natural to feel scared and frightened. What's not natural necessarily is to continually compare ourselves to others. And KPMG did a study that 75% of these high-performing executive women across all industries say that they have imposter syndrome, and other studies actually say it's 95%. But anyway, when I was working with her, she was like, I have imposter syndrome. I need to get over it because I'm a great speaker, which she was. And as we started to play different scenarios, one thing that I played that was one of her worst case scenarios was an a-hole white man. And she completely forgot that it was me. She goes, I wasn't even seeing you. I was just seeing an a-hole white man. And we played that over and over again until she wasn't triggered anymore. And then she kept getting invited to podcasts and to speaking engagements where mainly she was pretty much the only women in the cybersecurity world. And so once that lifted, she completely forgot that that's what we were working on, and we started working on more of the technical aspects of speaking and just the content of that. So I think that if that's something that is present, that can be shifted really quickly. Number 6 is don't ever say no comment. Sometimes in your profession and in other professions, it's legal. So you would say, legally, I can't speak to that. If it's not legal, you can say what I can speak to, or the transition phrase, and this can save your skin in so many different situations. I don't know about that, and what I do know is, and then you just jump right into exactly what you want to say. So, oh, do create a heart connection with the host and audience. This is a way that you can connect deeply with your patients and your audience before you meet them. So let's do this together. So place your hands on your heart, and then think of a time when you felt loved, safe, and cherished. You can also think about, I see, some of you have pets. You can think of a person or a pet. Sometimes it's easier to think of a pet and being given that unconditional love. And if that's hard for you, then think about something just that brings you joy and that feeling into your heart. And then all of you, since we can't see each other, just look into the webcam. Imagine that we're connecting to all of the other cardiologists, all of the other women cardiologists on this call, and then follow along with me. So breathing in through your nose, we're going to do it through the nose the entire time. For your nose for 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to hold for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then breathe out for 5. And then you can imagine that there's a beam of light to you and to your audience, or to all the people that you're connecting with, or whatever is in your imagination, that you're connecting to your audience, you're connecting to your patients, you're connecting to the people who need your message. Breathe in again. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Oh, holding for 5. And breathe out. One more time. Breathing in. Breathing out. Therapists do this to connect with patients, to give them that feeling of safety and connection. When they do it, they're looking deeply into their eyes. So when you do this with your audience, if it's a webcam, you're looking into the webcam like I am now. If it's a patient, you're looking into their eyes. If it's a host of a podcast or a show or a live, you're looking deeply into their eyes while you do this. And while you do this, and you're doing it in an imaginative way. You're not doing it in front of them, by the way. So this is something that you can do. I want to make that clear, that this is something that you can practice every single day in your office before a patient comes in. And you can practice this before your media interviews, so it starts to get ingrained in your muscle and mental memory. And when we do this, we sync up neurologically. So I'm connecting to you, you're connecting to me, I'm accepting and giving you, you're accepting and giving me, because that also starts to let go of all the fears that we have of being different, of being ashamed, of being made fun of, whatever that fears are that we all have. That starts to be able to release that. You give the acceptance and the love first, and then that's automatically returned. And then that also releases oxytocin, which automatically connects us with people. And it doesn't even take 1 minute. So then it also makes you feel calm and warm. We didn't even do it for 1 minute, so you can do it for that minute. And I'm curious if you would write in the Q&A how that felt to you, what you thought about it, anything that came up. And then Jenna will read that after. So don't accept, number 8, now we're on, don't accept being portrayed, positioned, or posed in any way that violates your conscience or your brand. So what do we do? Number 9 is we do offer an alternative that serves everyone and offers something better, something more enticing. And this is about asking for what you want. And I know that's a really big practice, but as you do it, it will happen easily more and more. And number 10, don't pass up an opportunity, even if you don't feel ready. Dr. Beth McDougall, who's an integrative physician and a past client of mine, she had only spoken inside of her clinic. And she was invited to speak at 1440 Multi-University at Scotts Valley to quite a large audience. And she wasn't ready, but what we did is we worked on the content of her talk, as well as how to use her body as an expressive instrument, as an expressive tool, and how to use the stage to connect her audience. And she became ready, maybe not totally ready ever, because I think that most of the time we don't feel ready. I can't eat anything. I'm still nervous before doing this. I've been doing this for 35 years. I still get the jitters. I just try to turn that into excitement. And so, no, oh, by the way, she was mobbed at the end of her talk. So she had done such a great job that people rushed the stage. Know that no one is ever ready, and that competence breeds confidence. So it's not the other way around. We don't just automatically get confidence. It's the competence of continually doing it and moving forward and practicing. It's that plan, prepare, and practice, and the iteration and the role play that starts to move us forward. So the more you do something, the better you get at it. And know that you're on equal footing with the media, that you have something to give them. You're not in a one down position. You are experts in what you do, and the media is eager for your information, and your audience is too. You're providing value to them in the audience. Poet Dorianne Lux says in a poem called In Any Event, what we are capable of is not yet known. And I just heard Martha Stewart in her masterclass talk about, you don't know what's going to happen in your life, And I love that. It's like what you're capable of is not yet known. Research from Sloan MIT reveals startling disconnect in women not seeing themselves as leaders. And I want to read this to you, word from word, from this article. Although women often outperform men in leadership effectiveness, they are less likely to identify as leaders. This isn't just about modesty or imposter syndrome. It's an invisible misalignment between competence and identity that powerfully skews the leadership landscape. Seeing oneself as a leader is often a preliminary step to being seen as a leader by others. Yet, this identification process is more fraught for women than for men, particularly in the workplace. Start seeing yourself as a leader. You're already leaders, all of you, given that you're the 15% of women as cardiologists. So it's up to each and every one of you to step up and take your one seat in the spotlight and to speak out for yourself and for others for what you think is right and just and important. And publicity is a really great bandstand for just that. So my hope is that all of you will do just that while being exactly as you are. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Ms. Hara. That was absolutely wonderful. I just was thinking the whole time how lucky we are to have you come speak to us and give us those pearls. I'm taking furious notes down here as you were talking, and I'm very glad that I have your book. So this is really so kind of you.
I feel so lucky to be here with all of you too. I mean, I was thrilled to be invited. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, we are so grateful. I love just the combination of like inspiration, practical skills, and the like like you said, that was less than a minute. That 5 seconds of breathing in and out and creating that connection is such a tool for us, and so are the S's. And so this is just something I feel so grateful. So thank you. I know in the Q&A here, someone shared that, thank you for sharing the practice of breathing. For me, it brought forth a moment of mindfulness, presence, connection, and peace. And then I've also been getting notes on the side from people saying this is so amazing that she's coming to speak to us. So I can say that we're getting a lot of groundswell of gratitude from all of the people here. Yes, and I thank you so much for that. And I would love to have you included on our panel. And I'd like to take the time to introduce our panelists. I'll just go ahead and stop our recording really quick.